Right, so as I mentioned over here, okay, so now you can see it, right? Okay, so as I mentioned over here, the conversion, it does not change the type of the variable, but they only convert the value of it as part of the computation. Right? For example, over here we have int result, and then because the result is type int, right? And then we want to have 4 times 5.45. Right? So int times it with double. If we just do it this way, it will give us an error because result is type int. Right? When it is type int, it will expect only an int value. So what happens over here is we force whatever the value from this calculation, it will get 21.8. From 21.8, we force it to be an int. Right? So it will not take the significant figures or the decimal point of it, but instead it will only take the first number of it, or the numbers without the decimal point. Right, so in this one, when we have our system.out print line and print the value of the result, it will print out 21, even though the calculation over here is 4 times 5.45, right? Because we are forcing it from this double value, we force it to become int. Right, so you can see that if you directly do 4 times 5.45, it will display the value 21.8. Right. But of course, in this one as well, you can force it to be an int by writing int in front of it. All right, so this is on this slide. It's just showing that whatever data type that you have, if you want to represent it in different types, you can do it. Right? It's either you would change the data type of it straight away, or just change the data type of the value that you currently want to see. Right, so data conversion, there are two types of it. There's the widening conversion and also narrowing conversions. So when in widening, it says over here it is the safest. It goes from type to type. For example, over here you are going from, you can think of int to double, or from byte to int, right? Because byte to int. Yeah, because the byte has the value up until 127 or 28, right? While int covers larger numbers. All right, so going from small to big, that's fine. That we call it as widening. There's also narrowing, where this one, when narrowing, we can lose the information, because narrowing is going from large data type to smaller data type. For example, int to short or int to byte, right? Because we know that byte is 127, see that we have the value 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like that, right? This value is not being covered inside byte. So if we want to change from this int to byte, then it will give some random number because it cannot contain the value this big. Right, so the example that we saw before, this one, the int result, right, same code as this one. In this one, this is an example of narrowing. This is because at this part we are changing from narrowing double to int. Yep, because we are changing from double right, 4 times 5.45, we will get some significant figures or float numbers or double numbers, and we want to change that into an int. So basically that is narrowing because we are losing the more information. For example, the output of it should be 21.8, but because we change it into an int, then it will only show 21 without the point form. So it depends on your program what you want it to do, whether you want to do the widening or narrowing of it. Right, so this relates back to the table that we seen before in topic 1, topic 2. What was it? Yeah, topic 3, part 1, where we look from the different data types and then the numbers that they contain, where this would relate to whenever you want to widen it or you want to narrow it to different data types. Right, so for data conversion, so we have the widening, narrowing. The way that we can do it, there are 3 ways. So we have assignment conversion, promotion, and also casting. The one that you saw over here, so this is casting, right? Because we write over here, we want to change it into an int, right? So we are forcing it by casting it to become an int. Right, so the first way of doing it, assignment conversion. So it says here when a value of one type is assigned to a variable of another. For example, we have int dollars equal to 20 and then double money equal to dollars. Right, so instead of writing double money equal to 20, we just refer the value of another variable. So this is widening conversion. Because the value of dollar is 20, type int, right? When we give it to double money, the 20, the int from before, it becomes double. So basically at this double money, the value of the money is basically 20.0, right? Because it is type double. But at this point, the value of dollars over here does not change. It is still 20 and it is still type int, right? Only that we are saying money would have the same value as dollars, but because money is double, it should be of type double. So that's why it keep the value of it as 20.0. Right, it also says over here, only widening conversions can happen via assignment, meaning that you can use the equal sign and give it the value straight away. All right, so that is assignment. Promotion. So promotion, it says it happens automatically when operators in expressions convert their operands or the numbers. All right, for example, we have over here result. Okay, in this one, the code is incomplete. So this result over here, the data type of it, it should be double. Right, so it's double result. So we have int count equal to 12, double sum equal to 490.27, result equal to sum divided by count, right? So what happens over here, sum divided by count, that is double value divided by int value. And we have seen before, when one of it is double, then the final value or the final result of it would be type double as well. Right? And because we are dividing double and int, so over here it will take the significant digits or the point form of it when it does the calculation. I think we have numbers in the next few slides. Right, so it says here count is converted to a floating point value to perform the division calculation, but the value of count or data type of it is not changed. It's only that the value within here that it changed it to double, or not exactly to double, right? Because like the sentence over here, it can be misleading actually, because you do not change the data type of count, or you do not change the value of the count to become double. It's only that when you are dividing double with int, double would take the priority of it. So the final value or the final result of it would be of type double. Similar example that we saw earlier about if we have 3 divided by 4, right? So even if result is type double, if we do 3 divided by 4, it will still do int divided by int, which will give the value 0. And because only R is type double, then it will show it as 0.0, right? So this is not the same if we have, say that sum is 3.0, or the value is 3.0 divided by 4. Right. So in this case, because double divided by int, then it will give us the significant digits, the point form. 0.75, is it the answer just now? Oops. Right, so the number itself, the data type of it plays a role in getting what would be the final output of it. Right, so even if it int divided by int, even though you want to give it to a double, it will just add 0.0 to it. So you need to make sure that is that the expected result that you want to see when it does the calculation. Right, so that was promotion. We have casting. So it says here casting, most powerful and dangerous technique for conversion, because we are forcing it into some data type that might lose the precision of it. So for casting, we can use it for both widening and narrowing. Right. So the way of using it is we would write the type of it in parentheses and in front of the value that you want to convert it to. Right. Yeah. So you can add precision to it. You can reduce precision as well. For example, over here we have in total equal to 50. And then we have float result equal to float total divided by 6. Right, so at this point, let me have my annotation on annotate. Right, because total actually has the value of 50. Right, so before this, before we look at the casting, it's basically 50 divided by 6. But then we are seeing over here, we want total instead of having the int value, we want to force it to become float value, right? So this is basically, it becomes 50.0 divided by 6. So when it does the division of it, it will give you the precision value as if you are doing double divide by double or float divide by float. Let me see. Yep, because in the next slide, that's like the code of it, of this one, and also it comparing if you cast it differently. Right. So this is the casting from before. Right. So it becomes, even though this is int, now we have changed it into float. So this is float divided by int. So float will take priority. So you will get the value as 8.333333. Right? If we only do, oh, there's no, if we only do result equal to total divided by 6, then it will show you as 8.0. Wait, let me double check it. That is correct. And total float result. Okay, see that we are doing it this way. Total divide by 6. Right, so it shows you 8.0 because int divide by 6. So basically 50 divided by 6 is 8. But because result is that float, it will just add 0.0 at the end of it. right? But if one of them is type float or double, then it will do the division and add the significant figures or the decimal point to it. Right? Okay, so this one give you 8.33. If you cast both of them, where you cast the variable total and also cast the value 6, you still get the same answer, right? So you can kind of like see that if you do it this way, it's kind of like redundant, because if one of them is float, then the final result will give you float straight away. You don't have to cast both of them. But if you want to cast both of them, this is okay, right? It will work. Okay, the other one is it doesn't matter whether you cast total or you cast the value 6. When one of it is float, then the final answer of it would be float as well. Right, so this same tree give you the same output. Right, so one thing to be aware of is the use of parentheses or the brackets. Right, if you do things like this, float in bracket and then another bracket, total divide by 6. So what happens over here is, this is basically you are doing int divide by int. So you are doing something like 50 divide by 6. Whatever that answer is, then only you would float it. Right? So basically over here you get the value 8, right? And then only you would float it. So it basically will add 0.0 to it, changing it from int to float. Right? So this is not something that you want to do. So be careful about where you put your parentheses. Right? If this is what you want to have as your output, then that's fine. But normally, people would do this one because of the mistake of placing the brackets or the parentheses. All right, so always remember that when you have the parentheses, that has the higher priority, so it will do whatever within the parentheses first. Right, so that was the three conversion types. So we have the way of doing it. So the first one was the assignment, second one is promotion, and the third one is casting, where we would write the type of it in front of it, in front of the variable or the value that we want to change it to. Right, so this is something extra about type conversion. So this is using the wrapper classes. For example, we have numbers in our string and we want to change it into int or double, right? So we can do it by using this pass int, pass double, or pass float, depending on what data type we want it to change into, right? So the way that you would write it, say that you have string number equal to 1 to 3. You want to change this 1 to 3 into a number so that you can add 5 to it. So you would write integer.parseInt and the identifier, which is string number, right? Or you can write inside the double quote 1 to 3. That works as well, right? So over here, what it will do is it will change your string 1 to 3 into number, and then it can do the addition to it. Right, so this is if you want it to be as an integer int. If you want to have it as double, then you would use pass double. For float, pass float, right? And then it will do the addition as what you want that number to be. Right? But even though doing these three things over here, it does not change that number is still type string, and it has this value as string, not number. Right? You might want to change it into integer or double or float and save it in a new variable of the correct data type. Right, so on your OL, I put a link, okay, this one, integer parseInt. where over here, int, where it tells you what it takes inside of it, right? Which is a string value. That is what being done here, right? So this is just for your information about if you have a string, you can convert it, you can change it into numbers. Right. What else we have? We have arithmetic computation and also interactive. Well, let's go on a few more minutes because this one is just looking into the maths class. Right, so this one, maths class. So this has already been pre-written, so we can use it straight away. So that means that if we want to do complex calculation, we can refer to the maths class and see if they have already written the functions that we want to use. For example, in the maths class, it has methods, for example, square root and also power. Right? So say that we want to do x to the power of n. Then we can use the maths class method. We can write it as maths.power, P-O-W, and then the number, comma, and then to what power we want it to be, right? And of course, this is if you want to use the maths class, right? If say that we have x to the power of 2, we can always write as x times with x. Other than power, there's also square root. In maths class, it has the square root, so it being represented by SQRT, square root. And then you can put the number inside of it, it will do the square root of it. Right, so for the power and also square root, like over here, what I wrote over here, it says maths.power. If we have x to the power of 0.5, that is the same as if you are doing maths.square root, right? Because to the power of 0.5, that is doing the square root of it. Right. Okay, so in the maths class, let's look at the API maths class, this one. There are a lot of methods that already have been written, right? For example, if you want to get the absolute value, you want to get the arc cosine, arctangent, cube root, cosh, and many other things, right? It has already pre-written. So whenever we want to write our code, we want to use this kind of equations or some of this kind of calculation, then we do not have to write the code ourselves. We can use the methods that has already been written within this maths class. For example, you want to get the value for log, even to have, say that you have two numbers, you want to know which one has the largest number between those two numbers. You can use this method called max, where it will compare the two numbers and tell you which number is larger than the other number. Of course, you can write the code yourself, but this would save you time than writing the code yourself. Right, so we have square root, power, exponential, log, sine, cos, tangent, round, finding the minimum value, maximum value. Right, there's a lot of methods inside the maths class. So you, the link I put on your OL, you can look through it and see if there's any of the methods that you want to use. Have they written it before where you can use it straight away? Right, so see that we have this equation, equation in maths. Quadratic equation, yep, quadratic equation, minus b plus square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Right, so when we write in our code, we cannot write it as what we write in maths, right? So as I mentioned before, any multiplication, you would need to write the asterisk or the star to mean that it is multiplication. Right, so for the same equation over here, it can be represented in these three ways, right? So you can have the square root, because everything is in square root, right, over here. So you can have b squared, right? So everything over here is within the max dot square root, which is the outside part over here, right? Where inside of it, when you have your b squared, you can have b times b, and then minus 4 times a plus c, which is that part, right? Or if you want to use b to the power of 2, b squared, you can also use the other method, the power method, right? Max dot power b comma 2, which is the same b to the power of 2 or b times 2. Right, or another way, as I mentioned before, for power, if it's to the power of 0.5, that is the same as square root. Right, you can have max dot power, this is the second part as before, comma 0.5 to the power of 0.5. So this will do the square root of it. Right, so this is the three different ways where you can represent this quadratic equation. Went through about the complex arithmetic computation. So basically using the maths class. Right. So we did look a bit on it, and I told you that I will repeat this one again. Right. So maths class, example of the methods that we can use, such as the square root and also power, and there's also the cube root, finding the sine, cosine, tangent. So there are a lot of methods within the maths class. So that means that if we need to do some kind of like more complex calculation, we might not need to write the code ourselves, right? Because some of them are already available, so we can use it straight away. But of course, in your program, if you want to write it yourself, you can write it as well. It's only that by using the methods that have already been written, so it saves you time and it saves you lines of codes that you need to write. Right, and I did mention last time as well, for example, for the methods like square root, SQRT, and also power, POW. Right, so if you are using max.power and then you see that it's to the power of 0.5, that is the same if you are using max.square root. Right, you will still get the same result. Right, so we did look at this one quickly last time. Before this one, let's look at this part first. Right, so some of the methods, we have square root, and the x over here, it takes in any number that you want to square root it to. Right, and then for power, it would take the number, and then this part is to what power you want it to be. Right, so in this kind of thing, it's better if you check the API of it, maths class. Because in your slides, it doesn't really tell you the detail of it, but if you check on the class, it tells you, let's see, which one should we select? Let's have power. All right, so you can click on it and it tells you what the first one is, what the second one is. Right, so it says here, return the value of the first argument raised to the power of the second argument. So this refers to your A and also the B. Right, so this API, it is really useful because it tells you the detail on what those methods are and how to use it. Right, and it also gives you like some situation as well. Right, A is the base and B is the exponent. Right, so the same thing for other methods. Let's look at round. Right, so if you use the method round, it says over here, it takes in a variable, but that variable should be type float. What it will do is it will change it to the closest value, to round it to the int value. argument is not, right? And then it tells over here, if it is not a number, an AN, not a number, then it will give you 0, and then the other things that it covers. Right, so this is to make sense of how you can use the API or the library to look through the methods that they have, and also how to read or how to use it. Right, so quite a lot of things over here. So this is just for Maths class. There are a lot of other classes, a lot of other packages that Java has. Right, so it really depends on what you are looking for, what you want to use it for. Even for the max, see, max over here. It says here, returns the greater of two int values. Right, so what happens is you would put in one number and then another number over here, and then based on those two numbers, it will find which one is the largest from those two numbers. Right, so just like one line of code, and you will get the result straight away. Okay, so I'll go back over here. Right, so these are some of the methods that you can find the detail of it inside the API from before. Right, so say that we have this quadratic equation. Right, so this is how we would write in maths. When we want to write it in code, we have to change it so that the code would understand it. Right, so for this equation, it can be represented in these three ways. Right, they will still give you the same output, the same result when you put in the value for your B, A, and also C. So it depends on which way that you prefer to write it and how many methods that you want to use. Okay, so for the first one, okay, right. So for the first one over here, so we know that minus B, that's fine. That is that part, right? Then you have the plus, we have the plus. And then looking at this first part over here, right? So of course we need everything B squared minus 4AC within the square root. So that's why we write maths.square root. So this is the name of the class that we are going to use, which is maths class dot it with the method that we want to use. So the method is we want to use square root, SQRT, right? And if we look at square root just now, square root, going back over here. All right, so looking at the square root of it, it says it will take one number type double. Right, so that means that when you have your variable, then you need it to be type double. Right, so it takes in one argument, just one number inside. So this is basically everything, oops, everything from here, this one, up until there. That is the double A or the variable of it. Right, but inside here we put it that it will do some calculation within it. Right, so that is the closing of maths.square root, and then this one over here is basically closing the minus B, the whole thing over there. Right, and then the divide 2A, as what we already know, so we divide by 2 times A. Right, so in this case, right, so you need to put it within within the brackets or having the parentheses. Otherwise, because what we learned last time when we have divide and also multiplication, it will do whatever that comes first. Right? Well, it doesn't really matter, right? Well, it might. So you can try and put in numbers to see whether it gives you the result that you expect or not. But just to be safe, it's better to use parentheses to enforce it that it will need to calculate whatever inside the parentheses first, and only it will do the rest of it. Right, so that is the first one using the square root. The second one is over here when you have b squared, right? So you don't want to write b times b, even though you can write b times b because only two of it. You can also use maths.power. So this is your class. Then you have your dot, and then over here that is your method, right? Your method power is POW. And then for method power, it will take the first one is the base. The second one is to what power you want it to be, right? So it's b to the power of 2. So you would write b, comma, and the power of it, which is 2. Right? So this method over here, this is actually within the square root. Right? So it will do the calculation here within the square root. And it has the same concept as before because it is within the bracket. It will solve the inside first, then only it will do the square root of it. Right? Okay, and then divide 2 times a, same as before. Okay, so the other way of writing it, okay, over here, instead of using square root, you don't want to use square root because you know you can use power as well to the power of 0.5. So if you use maths.power, so for the method power, it takes in two numbers. So if maths.power, it will take A and also B, right? Two things. So that's why over here you have the first one. This is square root, right? So this is b squared. You do it with minus 4ac. So that is only this part over here. Right? And of course, this b times b, you can also represent it by maths.power b comma 2. Right? But it's going to be to make your code longer because you are inputting a lot more methods inside it. For AC. Right? So that is that part over here. And then when you want to do the square root over here, while you are using power, so you would use comma, just that comma, and then to what power you want to raise it, over here to the power of 0.5. So basically the same as doing square root. Right? And then same as before, divide by 2a. Okay, so the other one that I said that you can write it as if you want to use maths.power, where you do b times b using the maths.power. So it can be written as minus b plus maths.power. So let's use that one. So make sure that you have the correct number of brackets. So that's why when you write your code, it's better whenever you open your bracket, you have your closing straight away. Right, so maths.power, inside of it, you would have your b squared minus 4ac. You can have my maths.power, POW. It's b to the power of 2. So that is the inside part of it. And then I want to do minus 4 times a times c. Alright, so that is the a part within my first maths.power. So everything inside there, whenever it calculates my b squared minus 4ac, I want it to be to the power of 0.5. See, I have that is closing that part. This is inside. This is my maths.power. This is 1, 2, 3. Right, so this is closing. I'm missing one, is it? That's closing that one. Maths.power. Oh no, that's AC. Right. So it can be confusing now. B. Okay, so that is within this part. This is maths.power. This is wrong, this part. Okay, I cannot edit that one. So I'll just rewrite it again. Okay. I have my bracket, minus b, plus. That is closing my outer bracket. And then I have my maths.power. that is my, to do my v squared minus 4ac. So that I want it to be to the power of 0.5. And within it, I have my b squared. I want to use maths.power. So maths.power b comma power of 2. And whatever that result is, I want to minus it with 4 times a times c. Right? And then whatever that result is, this should be to the power of 0.5. Okay, so that is the top part. And then all of that divide with 2 times a. Right, so you can see that this can be confusing. All right. We have another color. So this is basically doing that part. And then the power. And the rest of this is doing all of that. Right. And then this bracket over here, closing that bracket, is basically doing that part. Right, so this is, you can do it this way, or if it gets you confused when you put it within the same equation, you can always write it separately. So maybe something like double A equal to maths dot power v to the power of 2. And then you can have A equal to maths dot power. So this is reusing again your variable, your maths dot power b to the power of 2. So you can call it A again, minus 4 times A times C, and then the whole thing to the power of 0.5. And then divide with, I forgot my minus b. Divide by 2a. Right? So you can combine it as any way that you think would be easy for you when you look at it. Right? It's only that if you do it this way, this one, right? You have like several lines of codes just to do the calculation. If you put it straight away like this, then you only have like one line. But you have to be careful about the brackets and whether you use the comma at the correct place or not. Right? Because when you write the long equation, you are using several methods, then you might get logic error towards the end. So that's something to be careful about. All right. Okay, so this is basically going the step by step based on the equation that you would write within your code. Right. So I have went through with you these 3 ways of writing the code for this quadratic equation. Right. So any question about the maths class? Right. In the exercise that we are going to do later, so you are going to use the maths class just for you to try it out. Okay, so the last part in this part 4, we have interactive programs. Right, so we kind of have looked at interactive program before in the code, and I showed some example of it where we would take in the input from the user, so the user can enter some numbers from their keyboard. Right, so that is what we meant by interactive program. For example, over here, if we have this program, but we have 2 types of customer. So we have customer A and also customer B. So customer A, they are buying 2 things. Customer B, they buy 3 things. Right? So the thing that will be key in or will be typed in would be different for customer A and also customer B. Right? So this is what we want our program to do. We do not want to hard code it. We want it to be able to take some input and based on those input, do whatever it needs to do. For example, if it's doing some calculation, right? So we are not fixing it to, it can only do 2 plus 2. We want it to do, it can have any numbers and it can add it to another any numbers. Right, so for the interactive program, let's see what does it say over here. the one that we are going to use is we are going to use the scanner class, right? But to use the scanner class, we need to import the class so that we can use it. So some classes that we use, for example, like the max class, in Java, when we write our code, we don't have to import anything, right? Because normally for max class, we would always use it, so that we don't have to import it, right? So let's try it out. With my jig perhaps over here. Okay. Public class, one class. Public static void name string args. Okay. So let's have double A equal to max dot power 2 to the power of 3. Value of A value of A, just a minute, value of A to the power of, oh wait, because I put number, right? Value of 2 to the power of 3 is A. Okay, save it. All right, so no error over there. All right, so this is, okay, there's error. I forgot to put the plus. Okay. Let's clear this one, compile again. Okay, no error this time. Right, so this is just to kind of like recap again when you have like sentence, number, another sentence, number, sentence, and also another variable. Right, so you can concatenate, you can combine them using the plus. Right, so it will concatenate, it will not do addition. So this is because I'm using print line, or you can use print. If you use printf, then you would use comma. Okay, so let's run this one. All right, so it shows over here value of 2 to the power of 3 is 8. All right. Inside my code over here, I use max.power straight away. Okay. So let's see if I put over here int. Right, so when I compile it, it tells me incompatible types. So this is where you would look back at your API over here, where for the method power, it tells over here, it should be double. Right, and the input that it takes also should be double. Well, if we just put number like 2 and 3 that I put earlier, as we have learned before, any integer number that we put, because it should be double, it basically just add 0.0 to it. Right, so it doesn't matter even if you write 2 and 3 over here. Right, but the important part is when you want to use power, if you want to give it to any variable, it needs to be type double, because this is what it already mentioned for the method over here. Right, so it should be double. Okay, so this is for any max class. So you can do it for square root, finding the maximum, the minimum, round the number, do the sine, cosine, tangent, and calculation. Okay, so comparing that to this scanner class, so scanner, it enables you to take input from the keyboard. Right, so to make it interactive, you would need to import the scanner class. All right, so okay, so the the scanner that we would use, so you would write as scanner. So this is the identifier. You can call it whatever that you want. So you can call it as scan, you can call it as S, you can call it as input, doesn't matter because this is just an identifier, right? So this is the class that you are calling and you want to create a new object of it. So that's why you would write equal new scanner. And then because you want to take the input, so you would use system.in. Right? So, and this part, you can kind of like memorize it because normally that's what you would use. Only that for the identifier part, it can be anything. Right, for example, over here we have scan equal to new scanner system.in, or you can call it as scanner read equal to new scanner system.in. Right, just the identifier that can be anything. Alright, so let's do that part first. I'll remove this one. Right, say that we call it as scan equal to new scanner system.in. Alright. For the identifier, same rules as before. You cannot use any of the keywords. And also capital letter, small letter, they would mean different things. Alright. So in this one, if I compile it, it tells me an error because it does not know what scanner is. Alright. Right. And it cannot create a new object of it because it does not know where this comes from. So this is where you would have to write this import statement. Right, import java.util.scanner. So this is saying that the scanner class is within the util where you can find that within this part. Right, so let's see if I can find the package of it. Package. Which part is it inside? Util. Oh, it's easier if I just like Google for it. API Java util scanner. Right, so over here, if you Google for it, you will get SE7, SE8. So this is just the different versions of it. As for now, it's version, I think it's version 17. Right? But you can use any of them because normally they do not change much of what they already have from the earlier versions. Right, so basically your scanner within the util, so that is within the object as well. So this is just some of the, if you look at the hierarchy of it, there's some hierarchy saying that this class is within this package and then it's inside another one. All right, so to be able to use scanner, then you need to write the import. So import java.util, so it's within the util package dot scanner. So this is saying that you want to use the scanner class. So if I compile it, now there's no error at all because it knows where it can find this one, right? Which is within the scanner class. Okay, so this one is being really specific that you want to import only the scanner class. If say that you want to input everything within the util package, so not the scanner class, any of the classes, then you can use the asterisk or the star. Right, so it will import all the classes within this util. Right, so there's no error when you do it. But this one, it only means that it imports everything that you might use or you do not use at all. Right, so I would say that if it's only one thing, it's better to write the specific class that you want to use rather than you want to import everything within that package. Okay, so going back over here. So this is only creating the scanner so that you can use it to get some input from the user. But that is not all. There's another step of it. If you want the user to be able to type something, then you need to invoke some of other input methods. Right? We have next line method. where what it will do is whatever that you type from your keyboard, it will take the whole line of it. Right? So the way that you would write it, this is your identifier. For example, you have string answer, right? It would equal to scan. So this refers to the scanner object that you have created. And then the method that you want to call is next line. Right? So there's some steps after you have created the scanner object over here. Right, just a minute. Okay. Right, so let's look and try writing the code itself. Because over here, not showing the example on there, right? Because when we run this part, it doesn't do anything, right? So it runs it and then it ends the program. Okay, so what we can do is maybe we have system.out.print enter a sentence. Right? But as for now, if we just write it this way, it will just display enter a sentence and then end your program. Right? We haven't had using the next line to take any input from the user. So what we would do is see that we have string sentence. So we declare a string. So over here, we want to use it sentence equal to, you want to take whatever the user input, you would save it inside our sentence over here, right? To be able to take the user input, then we would refer back to the scan object over here, the scanner object. So we would write scan and then dot. We need to call the method to be able to read from the line. So the one that we saw before, it says next line. Is that the correct one? Next line, that's correct. And then close it. Right, so let's compile it. Right, so no error. If you run it, you can see that it's blinking over here because it expects me to write something. Right? So if I click enter, so meaning that that's the end of what I want to key in, then it will end the program straight away. That's because in our code, we say enter a sentence, take the value of it, and then that's all. Right? So normally for this kind of program, maybe you have another one, another system that out of print or print line. Let's have something like you have entered, and then let's refer back to whatever the user have entered to the identifier sentence over here. All right, so this is basically just displaying back what the user have entered. Okay, so let's clear this one. Let's run this. All right, enter a sentence. All right, for example, I enter that sentence. So when I click enter, it has saved whatever that I have entered inside my sentence. And over here, it will display you have entered and then whatever that I have entered before. Right? So you can kind of like see the different colors over here. When it's in orange, that's basically the input that the user type in. So this one, it shows in orange only on JGraphs. If you are using NetBeans or other IDE, they might show in different color. Right? Okay, so we have next line over here. So there are other methods. Let's look at scanner. See if they have the methods. Scanner, right? Over here, the one that we saw just now was next line. This one. Right? So for all the methods, you can check the details of it. So next line, it says, advances the scanner past the current line and return the input. Right? So there's also other things. For example, if you want to enter int, then you would use next int. If you want to enter a double, then you would use next double. Right? So you need to get the data type of it correct. So that's also next float, next byte, next long. and there's also next. Right, so for next, you can see that the type of it should be string. For next byte, the data type of it should be type byte. Right, for next int, it should be int. Right, so I'll show you for, so next line, it was string, so that's why we have over here string sentence. Right, say that we want to use next, so one of the method is called next. So I did not change the other part, I only changed the method that I want to use. So if I run this, no error, same as before. Say that I write the same sentence as before. Hello there, my name is Adila. When I click enter, it only takes the first part. Right? So this is the difference between using the next method and also the next line. So next line, it will take your whole sentence. If you use next, whenever it finds a space, it will just ignore the rest of it. Okay? So whether you want to use next or next line really depends on what you want your program to do, whether they want to take all of the sentences or only the first part of it. Right? So it can be something like in your game, and you are creating a game, you say enter your name. And you don't care about the last name. Because like some people, when they play the game, they would write their first name and also last name. Right? So say that we have enter your name, say that this is the game. Say that I enter Adla Nordin. But you don't care about my last name. So you will ignore the last part of it, but you only save the first part of it. So in my sentence over here, it only contains the value Adila. Right? Okay, so this one is using next and also next line from before. Those are string. Right? Say that if I want to use next int, right? I want to enter integer number. So if I use next in method over here, but my sentence over here is type string. If I compile this, it will give me an error. It says incompatible types, right? Because if I want to use this next int method, I need to save my variable inside an int as well. See that over here, I change to int. Let's change over here, enter a number, right? So let's change this one as number as well. Otherwise, it can get a bit confusing. Int number, you have entered number. Alright, so I get the type of it correct, compile it, no error. If I run it, enter a number. Right, it does the same thing as before. Right, say if I run it again, enter a number, say that I enter some characters, some words. It will give me an error because it says input mismatch exception. It expects an int, but this is not an int. Right, so be careful about what methods that you use and also what data type it is, because they need to be matched. Otherwise, you will get error. So the same goes if you want to use next double. Let's click this one first. Right, it tells you incompatible types because over here is int. That part is double. Then there's no error. You can, oops, what did I press? Then you can run it. Right, so you can enter any number even though you enter it as integer, but because the type of it is double, then it will add 0.0 to it. Right, or if you want to write right, with the point form significant figures, then it will display it because it is type double. Okay, so the API over here is really useful because it tells you all the details of it, what kind of things it expects, what kind of data type you should use, and how to use it. Right? But of course, it needs some time to get familiar with the API. Right? So I don't remember everything about the API. So it's always better when you need something, just like Google it up, and it can direct you to the correct part within the API. Or you can also go through the index of it and search through it. Right? There are a lot of packages inside of it, a lot of classes that it contains, so a lot of things. Right, okay, that's this part. So this is just explanation of it. It says scanner class to read input of various type. Right, so we have looked at next line method, next int method, and also the next double. Right, so it takes in various types of input. Alright, when we want to take the input from the keyboard, then we will use the system.in. Right, this is similar to what I showed you. You would create your scanner object. That's why you have the new scanner. So you are going to use and learn about creating the object more in programming 2. What else over here? But basically, just to be able to write the code as for now, you would write your class name scanner, whatever that you want to call it, scan, input, anything, equal to new scanner, and then inside your bracket system.in, right? So that you can take from the keyboard. And to invoke the methods, the next line, next int, then you would use any of the variable. And then you would write your scan or read or input, so depending what you call your scanner, and then dot it with the method that you want to call. Next line, next in, next double. Right, so at this part, similar to any code, if you don't want to put it or you don't want to save whatever the user input into any variable, you can do that as well. For example, in our code over here, okay, enter a number. This one should work. Right, so what I did is it will show the sentence, enter a number, and it takes in the number straight away. Wait, what happened? End it first, clear. Compile it. Well, it expects to enter a number straight away. Enter a number. Right, so you can see that how it reads it. So it basically it scan.next double 1312324 E7. Okay, so I'm not sure what it tries to do over here. Well, I was expecting it would display enter a number and then we would input it. But what happens over here in the program is it expects us to do the input first, then it displays it. Yeah. Okay, now is okay. Scan the next double. Right, so you can kind of like see like whenever you are coding something, it's better before you write hundreds of lines of codes. When you write a few parts of it, it's better if you compile and try and run it first, just to make sure that it does not give you unexpected thing that you don't expect to see at the output. Right? Like this one, I did not expect to see this one. But anyway, you can see that over here, even if when you want to use your scanner, you don't actually have to give it to any variable. You can do something like this straight away. Right? It's only that because you are not giving it to any variable, if you want to use the number that the user has input over here, you cannot do that, right? Because you don't have any variable that is holding that value. So you can do this if you only want to use that value once and never again want to use it. If you want to use it several times, then it's better to have it within a variable so that you can access the same value many times. You can do any calculation to it or manipulate it as what is needed. Right, so it says over here is part of the java.util class library. You must remember to import it, otherwise it will give you an error. Alright, so when you import it, you would write it at the first line. So over here, whether you have a space or not, it doesn't matter. Alright, so spaces in Java, it means nothing. It's only that I like to put space so that it's easy for me to read it, saying that, so those are my import and this starting of my class. Okay. Alright, so over here, an example of the code. So over here, it wants to use the scanner. So scanner scan equal to new scanner system.in, as what we saw earlier. And to be able to use it, we need to import it. So we write import java.util.scanner. Or as I mentioned before, if you want to import a lot of other classes as well within the util package, then you can write import java.util.asterisk and then semicolon. Right, so what it does over here, we have the scanner. It asks the user to enter a line of text, kind of like similar to what I showed you before. It takes in whatever the user entered on the keyboard, save it in message, and then at the end of it, it basically just display again on the screen what you have entered. Right, and this one is using next line. So your sentence can be as long as you want. If you use next, you can enter as many words, many sentences, but it will only take the first part of it. So when it finds a space, then it will ignore the rest of it. Okay, so going back to the flowchart as well. Right, so it says over here, pseudocode and flowchart. Say that we have reads a character string from the user and prints it. Right, so when you want to write your pseudocode, similar as before, you have your start and end, and then you would have your input message, right, taking in the input from the user, so and you save it in a variable called message. So you have input message and then prints it, display it. So you can have print, you've entered a message. So this is how you would write in your code, right? So you can be as specific as this, or you can write output message. Do I have? Yeah. I don't have it actually. So we did went through the pseudocode and flowchart exercises before. Let me change my color over here. Right. So one way of writing it, you can write it this way, or you can write it as start, input, message. For any display, you can use display, you can use the word print, you can use the word output, message, and right. Or you can, if you want to have something else like start, input, message, display, message, and right. So you can use different words to represent your input, your output. Okay. Right. So for that one, you can represent it into the flowchart. So you have your start in a rounded rectangle, or you can use oval, you can use circle. And then for any of your input and output, it should be in parallelogram, right? This shape over here. And then you need the arrows to show the flow of it. Right. Okay. So this is putting the code together with the flowchart. Right. So this is the code that we saw from before. Right. So even though in our code we have this scanner over here, right? In our flowchart, in our pseudocode, we don't actually say that we use scanner, right? The important part is that one will represent whatever input that you get. Alright, so to be more specific, to be more detailed on your flowchart or pseudocode, you can do things like this. Right, because you have enter a line of text, then you can have your output, enter a line of text. Right, and then you have your message over here, that is your input. You have your input message. And then you have your output over here. You have entered the message, then you have your output. Right, so writing it this way, it's basically reflect how your code is. Right, because you know you would display some sentence first and then take in the input and then the final output that you want to show. Alright, so whether you want to write it like the shortcut way, missing a few of it, like this one, it's still okay, right? But I would suggest that you would write it as detailed as possible so that when you want to start writing the code, you can refer to your pseudocode or your flowchart, and the way that you would write your code will become more smoothly because you already have the step-by-step. You have the output, what you need to write first, and then what's next, and then what's the other next steps. Right. Okay, so some of the methods that you can use with the scanner, there's next byte, but if next byte, then the variable of it should be type bytes as well. Then there's next short, next int, next long, next float, next double, next. Only one word of it. When it finds the space, then it will ignore the rest of it. There's also next line where it creates the whole line until you click enter. Right, so in this example over here, it's showing the difference of next line and also next. Right, similar to what I showed you earlier, but this one within your slides. Right, say that in this code, it says, so we have our scanner. We call our scanner as input. To use the scanner, we need to have our import statement, import java.ut.scanner. Right, so using next line, it says enter your name. It takes in my name and put it within this name over here. Alright, so another one, if I use next, still similar as before, it asks for enter your name, right? But over here, it uses the next method. So what happens is, in both cases, if I enter Adila Nordin, for both of them, in the first one, it will take Adila Nordin, right? Because this one is next line. The second one, even when I put Adila Nordin, it will only save the Adila part because when it finds the space, when I type in, it will just ignore the rest of what I type in from my keyboard, right? Because I'm using next over here. All right, so another example over here, it says here, if the question asks calculate fuel efficiency based on values entered by the user. All right, so it takes in input from the user, any calculation, similar as what we did before. And finally, it would output miles per gallon and then the value that it has calculated. All right, so input and output should be in parallelogram. For any calculation, we would use the rectangle, right? This part rectangle. All right, so looking at the code from this pseudocode and flowchart, so we have the scanner, it takes in the gallon and also miles, and then it will calculate what is the miles per gallon, the MPG. Right, and over here, the scanner, the object created, we call it as scan. Okay, so in this one, okay, when you take two input, you don't have to create two scanner. You can use the same scanner, right? Like this one, it says enter the number of miles. Then we have scan.nextInt. Whatever value that the user input, we save it inside miles. Right, and then we want to know the gallon of fuel use. So we ask the user enter the gallons of fuel use. Whatever that the user enter, we want to save it inside gallons, right? And to use our scanner, we call it as scan. So scan.nextDouble. Right, so this is just reusing the same scanner that we have over here. Right? You don't need to have several scanners. Use the same scanner. Right? And then do the calculation of it, and finally display miles per gallon. Right? So make sure that you really know about this one, about reusing it. Don't create several scanners, because even if you create several scanner, you are only left with redundant codes, because you don't need several of them. Just one of them is more than enough to enable you to take input from the user. Right. Okay, so let's see what else. Next in next double. So say that we have this code over here. We want to use scanner. So we would import our scanner class. Right. So if you have like two values that you want to take, you don't actually need to write enter the first number and then enter the second number. You can also have something like this: enter one number and one int number. So you are asking for two numbers within one line. Right? But the way that you would do it on your next line is, the first one, you would have your input or scan, whatever that you call it, the next double, because over here it expects a double number. And then straight away input dot next int, like over here, because it expects an int number. Right? Okay, so when you have, for example, you are calling next double and next int next to each other, you need to make sure that the user would enter it accordingly. So it should be in the correct order, double and also int. If the user say that enter two numbers, double int, but then they enter it wrongly, they enter 8 for double, 1.2345 for the int, it will give you an error. It says input mismatch exception, because the second part over here, you see that it expects an integer, an int, because you use next int over here. Right? You will get that kind of error. So in your program, the way that you would write it, it really depends. If you write it within one line like this, and you expect a double and also an int, if they enter it wrongly, then they will get some kind of error. If you have it in different system.out.print, so saying that enter the double number, then you take the double number. And then the next time you have system.out.print, enter an int number, and then you take the int. So that is being like more specific to the user, what they need to enter at that moment. Right? In this example over here, I don't want to have like many lines, so I put it within one line. Enter two numbers, a double and also an int. Right, so in your program, you can do it this way, or you can ask the user to enter one by one. Right? It really depends on how you want to code and how you want your program to be.